shot, but this is real. I mean, the bones, that's real.
Yeah, my bones, yeah. I'm 5'7" and thin. I can understand what you mean.
But that's not just thin.
No, what is it? Diane, tell me. Do you know?
It's scary thin.
I can believe what you feel. I can believe that. But do you really know? Do you really know?
No, you know.
Thank you.
Anorexia.
No way.
They've written it.
No way.
Bulimia.
No way.
That it's because of drugs.
No. Now, I grant you, I partied. But there have been times when I know I was going through a lot of emotional stress and my eating habits were awful.
Whitney dying. Crack rehab fails.
First of all, let's get one thing straight. Crack is cheap. I make too much money to ever smoke crack. Let's get that straight, okay? We don't do crack. We don't do that. Crack is whack.
If you ask most people in the early 1980s who Whitney Houston would marry, the bad boy of R&B Bobby Brown wouldn't have come up on that list. Whitney had previously dated Jermaine Jackson and Eddie Murphy, both of whom were of an ilk that the public perceived as far more qualified to date her than Bobby Brown. When Whitney and Bobby met at the 1989 Soul Train Awards, the chemistry was undeniable, and neither one of them could know just what their union would create and destroy. Fans were just waiting for the divorce, thinking that Whitney Houston, the classy American sweetheart that she was, would eventually come to her senses and leave Brown. The rumors began soon after their union that the two were on drugs, that Brown was frequently unfaithful to Whitney and had fathered an outside baby. The rumors seemed to gain validity with each run-in with the law that Brown would face.
Bobby Brown left for Israel in May of 2003. They were seeking spiritual guidance and respite from a recent drama over her alleged drug habits. Instead, they got a debacle, Whitney style.
The crack-tacular Whitney and Bobby going to Israel.
It's like, first of all, why?
I'm here on a spiritual retreat, visiting my family in Dimona.
Second of all, who invited them?
Whitney Houston showed up. My land, my land.
I love Israel. Yeah, what are you going to say this morning? My land.
I bet Israelis and Palestinians were like, we've been fighting over this land for years. Get in line.
My land.
I thought she was from Jersey.
Then, in what could be best described as an unlikely photo op, Whitney and Bobby did a meet and greet with Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, whose hand Whitney declined to shake.
She wouldn't shake his hand. What the heck? What was she smoking?
Whitney became defensive and protective of her husband, to the point where the cracks in her once flawless public image began to show. As I mentioned before, Whitney became increasingly defensive about her appearance and drug use. Never was this more clear than in Whitney's 2002 TV interview with Diane Sawyer and her radio interview with Wendy Williams in 2003. In both interviews, Whitney fans and listeners believed that Whitney was under the influence.
Whitney, Whitney, Whitney.
Wendy, Wendy, Wendy.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my Lord, have I waited for this day?
Have you?
Well, yes, I have. Haven't you?
Whitney.
Yes, dear.
Absolutely.
I know it.
I don't believe that I've ever met you in my entire career.
Ain't that something you talk about me all the time?
And you are top billing.
Is that why you talk about me all the time?
Absolutely.
You don't even know me.
Speaking of letters, you no longer have to write to Bobby. Bobby's out of jail. Bobby's back home now.
Yes, baby. You ain't. Don't you? You get all the info, don't you? You got the 411. You should know.
I want to make sure that I have all my stories straight.
Yes, baby. He's home, well and intact.
Do you regret Diane Sawyer interview?
No. Why should I?
Well, it didn't exactly show you in the best light.
You don't think so? Well, you don't show yourself in the best light. People still listen to you.
Yeah, but I'm on the radio every day.
Yeah, we just don't get to see your face, but they should know what you look like.
I understand that, Whitney. Perhaps one day I will have a TV show, but in terms of what I do, when I'm not shown in the best light, I guess one of the best things that I love about my career is that there's always tomorrow to come back.
See, and I love about my career is that my music speaks for itself.
Yeah, well, it does.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, I am the second watched most interviewed behind Monica Lewinsky in the history of interviews.
I'm surprised you're second to her. I mean, as far as...
You know, I mean, you're not, like, too cool about coming behind her, but, you know, it's all right with me because, you know, I got a lot of mileage from that, and I think that people basically, the people that I talked to that have made comments to me were very proud of me because it was a moment. See, I'm not one for...
Whitney and Bobby were divorced on April 24, 2007, following a very public and tumultuous union. When Whitney sat down with Oprah Winfrey in 2009, fans were hoping that Whitney had finally made it to the other side of her addiction issues and was readying a comeback.
When did it start to go wrong? Can there be too much passion? Can there be too much? Yeah,
it can clash. After The Bodyguard.
After? Well, that was early.
93, 94, 95 was filled with Bodyguard years.
Yes, yeah.
That record, that album lasted me. It went for a long
time,
way.
yeah.
Okay.
And yes,
Exactly,
of course, yes.
you know. I was on a whirlwind by that point in time. I was going everywhere. That record was so huge. So I had my baby.
Biggest ever.
Oh, God. I had my baby in one hand, and I had the man of my life that I loved so very much, and I was crazy for, with me. And he had just put everything aside of his own and just said, I'll go with you, don't worry about it. We'll do this thing. I think somewhere inside, something happens to a man when a woman has that much control or has that much fame.
Yeah. If he doesn't have his own.
He doesn't have his own.
Has to have his own.
You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying. I know exactly what you're saying. He has to have his own.
Yeah.
So during those years, because that was going to be my next question to you, I don't know how you live in a world where you are Bobby Brown and really you're in the shadow. You're in the shadow.
Yeah. He supported me. He loved me. We fought hard. We loved hard. And I think at some point in time, other things began to take place.
Was he jealous of you?
He's not gonna like this, but yes.
And then did you try to overcompensate?
I tried to play down all the time.
Yeah.
I did. I tried to play, I'm Mrs. Brown, everybody.
Yeah,
Don't call me Miss Houston, I'm Mrs. Brown.
And when you think about that right now, when you just even hearing you say that, like the little hairs right here, all my little so-called baby hairs, just because you're Whitney Houston with a voice that's a national treasure, like nobody else living at this time, and you're trying to pull yourself down.
You had a lot of people antagonizing and trying to pull at us one way to another, you know, pull at me, pull at him, you know.
Did you start to lose yourself in that? Because you're now trying to...
Trying to please.
Yeah, trying to please.
Yeah.
And trying to not be so big.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sure did. Yeah.
And that's where it started to go wrong.
Yeah.
Because you started to dim your own light.
Yep. Sure did.
For all intents and purposes, following her marriage to Bobby Brown, Whitney Houston was working again. She was to star in the remake of Sparkle, and she was releasing music despite an undeniable change in her voice. The years of drug abuse had caused significant and noticeable deterioration in her voice. Whitney could no longer hit notes that were iconic in her performances, and underwhelmed fans began to complain.
With her turbulent marriage behind her, Whitney Houston was on her own and searching for a comeback.
Everybody's fingers were crossed, everybody was praying, everybody was hoping.
Then came Whitney's new album, I Look to You, in 2009.
Wanted to still be in it, to still be competing, to still be trying to show off what she was and how great she could sing.
She just didn't sound like Whitney Houston.
A fact that became more apparent the more she performed, as the strains on the once golden voice intensified. During a difficult performance on Good Morning America, Whitney openly acknowledged the problem.
You know, I talk so much to my voice. It's kind of left me because when I'm singing, when I'm talking, I should be singing.
Then, Whitney Houston announced a world tour.
She went on tour, and people walked out. People walked out and asked for their money back.
In this concert in Australia, Houston takes a minute-long pause before attempting her signature high note. The big question, could she still hit it? Whitney was still capable of moments that echoed her previous perfection. She had the audience at the 2009 American Music Awards spellbound, but her performances were becoming scattershot, unpredictable.
The erratic nature of some days you bring it and some days you can't is corrosive to the brand and the image.
More importantly, it was corrosive to Whitney Houston, possibly her worst fears coming true. And making it even more difficult was the fact that Houston's misfires came at a time when mistakes could be watched anytime, anywhere, by anyone.
Internet had not been her friend. These recordings, her performances would go viral. A million commenters would come on and talk about what a train wreck she was.
Janice Min says Whitney was becoming a star no longer famous for her talent, but infamous for rehab stints and tabloid antics, including a rumored odd couple romance with singer Ray J, 17 years her junior.
And the only time you saw Whitney Houston in the headlines was at the supermarket checkout. She was in the press for all the wrong reasons.
There's just so many heartbreaks in the last years with Whitney Houston.
Too many for her to take, you think?
For so many years, she had everyone looking back at her. Love, unadulterated. She did not quite have that anymore.
Just 3 years after Whitney's interview with Oprah Winfrey, Houston, a world-renowned singer, actress, and mother, was found dead in her Beverly Hills hotel room. She was in town for the Grammys and had previously attended Clive Davis's pre-Grammy party. Whitney was just 48 years old. Despite Whitney's struggle with addiction, since it appeared that Whitney was moving on with her life and doing better, many fans believed that Whitney would completely overcome her affliction and would return to her glory days both in her public image and vocal performance ability. For these fans, Whitney's death was as shocking as it was painful. Those close enough to Whitney were seriously concerned. Her mother, Cissy Houston, previously made attempts to intervene, but to no avail. Houston's autopsy reported her death as being caused by accidental drowning and heart disease. Cocaine was also found in her system at the time of death.